Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Ames. I'm the founder and director of Defend Life. We're here in front of the Planned Parenthood Abortuary in downtown Washington, D.C., the flagship of the abortion industry, here in Washington, just blocks from Obama's White House. And we have with us a former abortion provider, Heywood Robinson, a medical doctor from Texas, and he has some very important things to say about Leroy Carhart, the late trimester abortionist, who's performing his late trimester abortions in nearby Germantown, Maryland. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here in the capital of our wonderful country. Thank you for inviting me to this town. To stand here in front of Planned Parenthood is an organization that we have known for a while. Its own name is somewhat of a lie, because Planned Parenthood does not help people be parents. It's more like Plan D Parenthood. But the reason we're here today is to talk about and challenge a debate for a doctor with myself and Dr. Leroy Carhart. As a little background information, Dr. Carhart came here from Nebraska. He was trained by another well-known late-term abortionist, Dr. Tiller, who was unfortunately and tragically assassinated in church a number of years ago. He is basically taken over as being known as the go-to person for late-term abortions. He moved from Omaha because they made laws there to regulate late-term abortion. And the reason he came to Maryland was because Maryland has basically no regulation on abortion. So he comes here weekly, doing abortions on late-term women. After being here 2 or 3 days, he returns back home to Omaha, and he does this on a weekly basis. I challenge Dr. Leroy Carhart to a debate to discuss how wrong what he's doing. The whole idea, the notion of abortion is wrong, but he practices in an itinerant fashion the most hideous types of abortion in late term. Some of the babies that he's aborting would be survivors in neonatal intensive care units. It's unfortunate that he thinks he's bringing a service to this area, but I think it's actually a tragedy. I look forward to bringing the truth to the table and have all witnesses have an opportunity to hear both sides. As a former abortionist, I know what it's like to practice. And thankfully, I'm no longer doing that. One day, I hope Dr. Carhart won't either. Thank you.
In that debate, by the way, if Leroy Carhart does show up for it, will be posted on YouTube, and there will be a link to it on Defend Life at defendlife.org. So anybody watching this video can easily watch that video of the debate between Dr. Robinson and Leroy Carhart. Now, if Leroy Carhart doesn't show up, guess what? We're still going to have a debate. So there'll be something there on YouTube. Thank you. And now, questions for Dr. Robinson.
Dr. Robinson, you said that you were a former abortion doctor. What lessons did you get out of that practice?
Well, a number of years ago, I had a conversion. I became a Christian. When I became a Christian, basically I saw life the way the Lord sees life, and that human beings are God's precious, most prime creation, and that he absolutely detests when we destroy life. He believes that what our Constitution, what our Declaration of Independence says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And both if you look at our founding fathers' documents, if you look at the Bible, it's all pro-life.
I'd like to ask, was there a specific moment, or did it take a while for you to come to the realization that you should no longer be
Well,
doing this?
it was very soon. I remember clearly, it was probably maybe several weeks. I just had that quiet voice say, well, now, Heywood, we need to sit down and talk about that abortion stuff you used to do. And I'm going to let you get a feeling for where my heart is and how that tragedy grieved me. And basically I became convicted, and I guess the easiest way to look at it, it was somewhat of a Saul-Paul conversion. After, being a killer of preborn children and believing in it, I became a fighter for life and a fighter on behalf of those innocent preborn children.
Another question for you, Dr. Robinson. You say that God values life, but what about abortions in the case of mothers who might lose their lives if the child is continued?
Okay. Now, when we look at it from a medical point of view, let's just say we have a complicated pregnancy that could indeed threaten the life of the mother. It doesn't happen that often. However, the way obstetrics is practiced, you basically have two patients. You have the mother and the baby, okay? What obstetrics tries to do in the event that you have a life-threatening disease with the baby or with the pregnancy is bring the pregnancy, the baby, as far along as possible without the mother dying, because if the mother dies, the baby doesn't live. So the way it's practiced now, because we can take care of very young babies, no, it's not, you're not forcing a woman to keep a child. What you're doing is you're using our technology to create an environment that will maybe give the baby a chance to live. And that's the logic of treatment of that type of situation. Now, in my training, I did see one very interesting case of a woman who had rheumatic heart disease, and she was in very bad congestive heart failure. And basically, she made the decision that she was not going to deliver early, and she wound up dying, but the baby lived. That's a challenging situation, but that was her choice, and that's what she did. Back in that time, I thought, oh, no way. She could always have another baby, you see. But she made that choice. But today, that was a number of years ago. We've got a lot more technology now. When we look at what Dr. Carhart is doing, he is killing babies that we can now take care of in a neonatal intensive care unit. It's such schizophrenia. It's really not medicine. When we look at abortion globally, it does not fit the program for medicine, or the way we think of the purpose of medicine, which is to heal, to protect. The abortion is a surgical procedure whose success is the death of the baby. Abortion is not safe. It always kills the baby and scars the mom. Okay, so this procedure is not mainstream medicine, even though we do 4,000 abortions every day. About 50 million innocent preborn Americans have been killed since 1973. That is an enormous injustice.
As far as I remember initially when the decision was made, a lot of African Americans thought this is a genocide policy, but then it seems they turned around and now have abortions in such great numbers that they're almost wiping out the whole.
Right, and that's another tragedy. As a black American, recognizing that blacks actually experience abortion at about twice the rate of their counterparts, of their white counterparts. And that is not by accident. That is by design of organizations such as the one that I'm speaking in front of right now. For those that may watch this video, probably one of the best videos that outlines how this genocidal plan has basically been brought out as a documentary, a video called Maafa 21, MAAFA 21. It is an eye-opener and lets you know that this was more than just a political thing and about women's rights. But I also want to add that this is not just about women's rights. There's when you look at pregnancy, there's always a man involved, except for one time that I know of that there wasn't. But we men have abdicated our responsibility as fathers and protectors of our children, particularly as we were mentioning black Americans. Unfortunately, about 70% of new black families are single, mother-led families. Our fathers are not taking the responsibility. Our children are absolutely dying of fatherlessness and father hunger. And the black family is literally imploding because of that. When you combine that along with our abortion rate, we have a crisis that we really don't speak about in the black race because it's not politically correct to talk about these issues in the realm of mainstream black politics, which unfortunately is rather liberal.
You mentioned the care that now can be undertaken to bring the baby as far along as possible. I'm assuming that care is expensive. What if someone can't afford that versus an abortion, which is really expensive?
Well, you can't keep a patient out of the federal law stops a hospital from not admitting and treating a patient. There's, our healthcare problem is that people don't have good primary care and access to that. Everybody has access to hospital care, and there's not going to be a woman who won't have access to what we call high-risk obstetrical care. It is expensive, but it sure is worth it. Yeah, it's impossible to put a dollar value on one life, but for some reason, many Americans do not grasp the tragedy of abortion, how we could not allow 50 million of our fellow Americans to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when you look at the preamble of the Constitution and see how it ends, to ourselves and our posterity. The framers, the founding fathers, recognized that we can't have this rule of law that we have enjoyed in this special experiment called the United States unless the same rights and privileges that are written in those documents go down through the generations and go down to our children. And they can only go to our children if they're protected also.
Dr. Robinson, how did you first become involved in abortion?
Well, I was trained at Martin Luther King Hospital in South Central Los Angeles. And it's interesting that Martin Luther King's name would be a place where I would be learning to do abortions, but that was the case. The abortion procedure basically is the same one, the suction curettage or dilation and curettage that you would do on a woman who has, say, a spontaneous abortion or an incomplete abortion. You need to get the uterus cleaned out so they don't get, get infection, etc. Now, it just so turns out that same procedure can be used on a normal pregnancy to kill it. So that's how I learned it by doing those procedures. But also in that same hospital, we did do abortions. Okay, very interestingly, when you think about the schizophrenia of how this is laid out. On one unit, we're delivering live babies. We walk down the hall and we do abortions. And then also across that hall, we have the neonatal intensive care unit where we're taking care of babies the same size as the ones that we're destroying just down the hall. On the one hand, life, on the other hand, death. It's it's an uncanny thing when I look back on that kind of power. I think what happens as you live through that deception to think that you have the right to go take another person's life because you're a doctor? How did we get there? How did we become so desensitized and so dehumanized in our country that a defenseless, innocent, preborn child is simply looked at as an exercise, as a right? The Supreme Court did rule in Roe v. Wade in 1973 that this was constitutional. I believe that the Supreme Court erred there, as they have erred in the past. Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson, those were corrected eventually. So the reason I'm in this fight is I'm in it for the duration. I'm not worried about how long it's going to take. I'm just worried about being faithful and letting God work, because one day I believe we will win. It may be during my children's watch or my grandchildren's watch, but we're going to win this thing, and we're going to have preborn children rights again in this country.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you for coming.